Now we'll get into some of the API and CLI options. And this is the part where we'll get a little bit more into some of this third-party software that you can use to just really make this a piece of cake. So we have Sarge reports. And that is the simple Actifio report generator. As a matter of fact, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to show you today, we can just get out of Report Manager. And I'm showing you multiple different ways to get it because I want you to have options. I want you to be able to do what works best for you in your deployment, in your environment, for your use case. And I also want to show you different things that you can bring in at different points of the life cycle. So maybe you don't have a trap relay set up yet. Maybe you just need to depend on email. I mean, you can also get everything that you got in email out of Report Manager as well. So we've really put a lot of work into making sure that all of this information that you need to be successful on a daily basis is available in a ton of different venues. It can either be pulled out of the API, we can put it in a nice PDF for you, whatever way you're going to actually be able to leverage that information. Because if you can't leverage it, it doesn't have any value, which is one of the reasons we provide it in so many different flavors. So if a CSV is what works best for you, we can do that. If a PDF is what works best for you, we've got Report Manager. If just a text scraper, third-party monitoring software works, we can do that via traps, we can do that via email, we can do that via API. Now we also have some built-in tools. And these again are the Sarge reports. There's a ton of them. The three I like the most, and there's one in particular that I would actually suggest you run on a daily basis. The one I suggest you run on a daily basis is Report Health. Report Health, as we can see here, it's on the left-hand side of the screen, is going to give you the host name, the version, scheduler use. Now, by that I mean, is the scheduler turned on or turned off? That's critical. It'll tell you about SLA violations. It'll tell you about all your failed snaps. Again, important, data protection, absolutely tantamount to being successful here. It'll also give you MDisk and VDisk health and VDisk count. I've spent a good portion saying, let's not log into every cluster. You don't want to log into 50 CDSs. That's not how you do it in 10 minutes a day. If we have to log in all 50, we're spending hours. And if we're spending hours, that's time. Time is money. We want to save both. We want to save time. We want to save money, which means we don't want to spend hours. We want to spend minutes. And so we can actually call these remotely. I'm not going to get into the construction of a remote SSH call. You will get this. This is part of the deck. I'm sure many of you could write your own remote calls. But the key is we don't want to go to every one. So we can put it in a loop. If we have 50 CDSs, we can run that report health on every single CDS via a single script. Could be Bash, could be PowerShell, could be Python, could be Ruby, C++, C#, C flat, whatever you're comfortable with. We make this information available to you either via our plain text CLI, where we're going to use this report health command. We've got it in our traps. We've got it in our API. There's a tons and tons of different ways to pull this information out and aggregate multiple clusters in a single action. And again, I don't really want to walk through how to build a loop. I'm sure most of you know how to build a basic loop in Linux or PowerShell. If you don't, again, these slides are going to stay a part of the deck. You can kind of use that as a framework to build your own off of. Now we're going to get a little bit more into the API use and some of the third-party monitoring. I've recently gotten to some projects, and we've found that we can do some really amazing things with some of this third-party software. We do have an open REST API for every CDS and every SCI. So long as you're not planning to develop your own software or develop your own, we'll just cut to the choice. As long as you're not going to develop a revenue stream based on our software, leveraging our API, you can just have it. Open up a support ticket, let our folks in our support team, our customer success engineers know, hey, I'd like to use your API. They'll issue you a key. They'll then file it into your account so that you can then go into the portal and recall your key if you wrote it down wrong, or if you have another user, you say, just go into the portal. The key's right there. Do whatever you want with it. These keys have admin level access. So all of the command line stuff that we've talked about in the past couple months in these webinars, as well as everything we talked about today, is all accessible via the API. The API integrates seamlessly, absolutely seamlessly with SolarWinds and ServiceNow. I have extensive hands-on experience with this. You can actually, if you're a little bit clever and you understand, sometimes these jobs fail because of these three clearly identifiable things. You can actually build automation into SolarWinds and ServiceNow to then try the job 3 different ways with those 3 different parameters set to true or false, depending, until the job finally runs successfully. You can even change connector options. So if you need a full ingest, if you know that maybe some disk sets got reshuffled and an incremental is going to fail, or there's a potential for an incremental to fail, we can then, via automation of this third-party software, tell it, shut off the change block tracking. Give me a full ingest. Once the full ingest is complete, turn change block tracking back on, and then turn the regular schedule back on. So if we know that jobs will run successfully, if we can account for maybe 2 or 3 different situations, we can actually use all of this monitoring that we've been talking about. So the API it's a standard API. It's an API just like any other API that you've used. However, we offer API access to things that did not have API access before Actifio got their hands on them. Now, what we've actually done is we've taken one of our services that we use to talk to all this stuff, and we're actually using that to send internal calls via the API. So you make an API call, we translate that to Actifio language, to actual Actifio command, and we issue that under the covers. So if you kind of have some preconceived notions about what APIs can do and what they cannot do, I would ask you to reserve those for a moment. Take a look at ours, because we're doing things with an API, specifically with things that have never had APIs before. And if you were to buy it off the shelf today, it will not have an API. It only has an API if you have it attached to an Actifio environment. Really take a look, be a little creative, because I guess there's a lot there that nobody else does. We're the only people doing it. We're the first ones doing it. It's great, and we want to make it available to you. So again, here in my example, we can use all of our UDS commands, UDS info, UDS task. We can use all of our SVC commands. Not quite so popular. Everybody should be familiar with UDS commands. If you're not familiar with UDS commands, I'm going to continue to be a shill for our old webinars and tell you to go check out our CLI webinar. SVC commands are not going to be relevant so much with Sky. So if you really just kind of focus on the UDS commands for your API integration, that's going to take care of 95% of what you need as far as getting the information out in an automated fashion so you can look at it while you're drinking your morning coffee and have a great idea of everything that's going on, not just understand what's going on right now today, but know what's going to happen in 90 days before you finish that cup of coffee in the morning. And again, I don't want to get into the full construction of an API call because there are so many different ways to make an API call. Again, Python, Ruby, C#, C++, Bash. So if you need more information, we're back to the resource slide. We've got a great video on the Sarge reporting webinar. Now that's going to be our report health, report pools. The Actifio CLI webinar, that's going to be all these UDS commands, and this is going to be all of the command line based information that you're going to want to leverage our API for either native or third-party monitoring, or as we discussed a little bit, automation, which is excellent. And we've got loads of documents. We've got the Sarge document, the API and CLI. With those 2 documents, you can do anything you want with our API. You can actually invoke API commands on hosts and hardware that have never had API access before you attach them to our solution. And again, you can always head over to our YouTube channel where we've got all of this. We've got loads of great videos on SQL, app recovery, Oracle, RAC, ASM rebalance, and switch. Loads of great stuff. And again, all of these links are interactive. So when you get the slide deck, all you've got to do is click. It'll bring you exactly where you need to be. Thank you for joining us for another YouTube Tech Tip video. If you like the content you're seeing on this channel, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you will be alerted to any future content.